So I would just like to start by saying that I am so touched by the amount of people here, but also the quality and the information and the openness and the beautiful food that you've all created. And obviously you really have a passion and a love for the importance of living a healthy life and helping people to live more healthy, full lives, which can only benefit everyone on the planet. So I want to not only thank you for, what you're doing for yourselves and your family and the difference that makes, but for the difference it makes to me and every one of us here that you're doing what you're doing. It's huge. So I want you to know that this is one of my passions. There's nothing I would rather do than talk to a group of people that really want to increase the quality of their life, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. I have a background as a naturopath for 40 years now. I am not just involved with food. I have a very deep background as a Waldorf teacher, an anthroposophist, working with homeopathy, working with the subtle bodies of the whole system. And this talk is going to be primarily about GAPS. But I want to start this out by opening up the context a little bit more, because we're not just physical people. We have a profound emotional impact that goes on with all of us, and Steiner would call that the astral body, our emotional being. And that layer can be so clouded with pain and the ways that the body will actually armor itself from being hurt like that again, that it can have a profound effect on our health. And if your emotional state is healthy, it can have a profound effect, okay? And mentally, what we think. I mean, for God's sakes, I just think back on myself. I was an ism eater forever. Ism eating to me is you read a book, you get excited about something, and you completely forget about what's going on with your body, and you become a food Nazi, and you eat the way it tells you to eat rather than listening to your body and learning about what's going on for you. So even with GAPS, it's important to always realize that your healer is yourself and your body, and we need to listen profoundly to that. And hopefully today we'll have time for me to give you some skills in supporting yourself and how to listen and what to look for as you're, beginning to go through your healing process. So that piece is very, very important, our mental bodies and our spiritual bodies. The subtlety, the energy that comes from the cosmos, and the way that we are all profoundly connected. I just want to tell you that my dear friend just came over, Dr. Consuelo Harwood. She's a fabulous, open-minded medical doctor, and she has so graciously opened her office to me, so I work out of her office here in Austin. Thank you, Consuelo. And let's see here. And then, of course, we can't forget the physical body. And so much of us, so much of our training and so much of what's around us in the world has basically stopped looking at the fact that we have an ancestral background and that our bodies have been designed to eat in a certain way. And instead of looking at the real nutritional needs and the real needs of the body to be able to deeply connect with the foods and with the life and the energy that's involved with the whole cycle of the food, being outside with the sun and the air and, dealing with the seasons and how food is available at different seasons and all this sort of thing. When we eat in harmony with this, which is what we were designed for, we're going to be in tune with the survival mechanisms that rule our physical body, because our physical body is all about survival. And so if we can support this whole survival mechanism by recognizing that we are part of this earth and eating in harmony with this earth will help you the most. And, every day something amazing happens. I learned so much from my clients. And today I had another one of those fabulous epiphanies when I was working with actually a husband of one of my patients on the phone. And she has really, really severe emotional issues and GAPS issues and some really very, very unusual manifestations of ear issues and things like that. And she's basically just in anger and looking for darkness I mean, all the time. And I've just only seen her once or twice, but she's blaming her husband for everything that ever happened in her world. And I had a chance to talk with her and talk with him, because he's been totally taking care of the kids and cooking and doing everything in the house, making a living and everything while she's going through this process. And also, you know, being told that he's horrible because he's not doing things right. As he opened his heart to embrace gaps and learning how to cook and doing all these things for his family in addition to doing everything else. And I explained to him that one of the things I learned from being with Natasha, and she wasn't talking about, you know, the gut and psychology syndrome, she was talking about the gut and physiology syndrome here, where she was working with people that have eating disorders. And she talks about when you start getting the proper nutrition in the body, after a while, and for people it's at different times, but most people, not everyone, because we're not all the same, but most people will have what she calls the bingo day. Do any of you remember her talking about bingo days or reading about it anywhere?
And not everybody here was at the conference or knows exactly who Natasha is or what.
Oh, okay. I'll introduce all that. Great, thank you. Anyway, a bingo day is when a light goes off inside of you and you have an epiphany and you realize something and your whole world changes. So part of what happens, and we're going to be talking a lot about something called the gut and psychology syndrome, the relationship of the brain to the digestive system. And what happens to people at a certain point when the nutrition is strong enough and the gut and the brain barriers both start healing is that you realize when you've been out of sync that you've been out of sync. And she clearly has a sensory deprivation issue going on. And she doesn't see things clearly, nor does she feel things clearly. And that's so obvious when you're working with people who are anorexic, right? They look in the mirror and they sincerely see that they are big fat people. They do not see that they're skin and bones. On their bingo day, they look in the mirror and they see that they're skin and bones. Well, all of us have certain degrees of needing bingo days, because all of us have certain degrees of conditioning that we have let get in the way of clear, pure perception, clear, pure awareness. And part of what it takes to actually support your brain in being strong enough and being healthy enough to have a bingo day and have the potential for awareness that is clear and pure awareness, other than all of the programming that's happened for us, is for us to be healthy enough. And Weston Price talks about how beautiful the people were in these Aboriginal cultures. And I think a big piece of it has to do with the quality of food and their connectedness to nature that they were living, because they were no longer out of sync with these beautiful cosmic forces. If you study a little bit about Rudolf Steiner, you're going to hear a lot about these cosmic forces and how we need to be open to them. I was reading one of the books that was written on anthroposophy and autism, and he talked about digestion in a very interesting way. And this is going to be my last piece outside of talking to you straight gaps. But I just think it's a beautiful context for us to think about. And he said that our digestive system is what allows us to take in, receive, and process everything. That means mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. When we have children who cannot take in, who cannot process, who cannot receive the world around them, they have a digestive issue. We have to recognize that everything affects everything. That digestive issue affects the whole way we perceive, receive, and absorb and function and use things. And we can bring food, which is a major piece to the puzzle, into the bigger picture of the puzzle, and put it all together. But I think we have to remember that it's really, really important to constantly do our best to find a way to stay in connection, to stay in love, to stay in appreciation and gratitude. I was so happy to hear Devorah, start out by invoking us all to touch on the levels of gratitude before we ate and for each other and, what's happening here, because that's one of the most profound healing forces. So with that as a foundation, I want to encourage this sharing that we're going to have today to definitely be a discussion, not just a lecture. And, I talked about, do you think people would rather have a PowerPoint presentation or, or sharing? And I'm so glad we're not doing a PowerPoint presentation. And that I'm not just reading to you, Natasha's words, but that we can really share together. And I encourage you to go on the websites. Dr. Mercola has, I think, a 2-hour interview with Natasha. She's amazing. It was incredible to train with her and become a practitioner of her work. I feel very honored and very grateful, and I think we should have hundreds more people, all over the country doing this.
What is her name, Natasha?
Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride. And she has 2 websites. One is called GAPS, G-A-P-S, for Gut and Psychology Syndrome and Gut and Physiology Syndrome, .me. And the other one is Doctor, spelled out, D-O-C-T-O-R, Natasha.com. Those are her 2 personal websites. There are websites all over the place. There are incredible forums. So, as others of you chime in and tell us about your story and your history and what's happening for you, perhaps you can share what forums, what blogs, whatever have been helpful for you, so that we can, share that information with everyone, because I don't have time for forums and blogs. I'm in the trenches, and I'm also studying all the time or going to courses when I'm not. So, welcome. Welcome.
Sorry, I was late. I had a class this morning.
Oh, it's perfect you're here, honey. Every time, everyone there has their perfect time here. Did you have a chance to get some food? Do you want something?
No, I ate.
Okay.
Earlier.
So, oh my God, that soup is delicious. Okay, so, Natasha Campbell McBride. This is an incredible woman. She has a background as a neurosurgeon from Russia. And she married, and I believe moved to England. I think that happened first. Had a child, and that child was autistic. And this was 16 to 17 years ago. And what was available then was really antiquated, very, very, it didn't make any sense, really. I mean, all they wanted to offer to people, and honestly, this is one of my biggest pet peeves right now, is that the status quo out there has nothing to do with healing autism. They don't believe that it can be healed. All they believe is that we have to manage these children as compassionately as we can, and also make our lives as easy as possible. So if necessary, we'll just drug these kids in any way we need to so that you can have a life that works. Okay? And that's the basic model out there. And I just came back from going to the Children's Hospital in downtown Los Angeles. They were doing a talk. I was so thrilled when I saw the title. It was on the gut issues, enterocytes or whatever. I forget exactly what the words was, but gastrointestinal effects in relationship to autism. And they're basically coming from the same point of view that you can't cure it, that you might want to just try and give the kids a little bit more natural foods, feed them fresh orange juice and apple juice, and try and take the sugar out of their diets as much as you can. A little bit's okay. And, there was absolutely no real awareness of what diet does. And one of the points that comes up so often when Natasha shares is that a gastroenterologist his work has to do with everything from the tip of your tongue to your anus, right? It's that long tube. And gastroenterologists, we've even heard them say this themselves, they don't realize that the food that you're eating that goes in here and comes out there has anything to do with gastrointestinal health. It's amazing. Just amazing. And now we have incredible levels of science that can show us so many different things. And one of the fascinating things to me is the relationship that we can see just from an embryological level of the digestive system and the brain. They actually come from the same cell, and they're the same basic tissue. And what we are becoming more and more clearly aware of, and there's lots of research, and Dr. Wakefield, who Dr. Natasha has tremendous respect for, I guess he's now in Austin, Dr. Andrew Wakefield, with his amazing research on autism, he basically showed that what's happening with almost all these autistic children, because they had really challenging gastrointestinal issues, digestive issues, pain, bloating, swelling. And when they went to see autistic doctors, they never even, mentioned anything about the gut. And here are these children suffering immensely. I mean, I had one child in my practice who had as many as 16 ejectile diarrheas daily.
What? No one even asked.
No. The doctors didn't. The parents started to. But they completely thought of them as completely separate issues, that one had absolutely nothing to do with the other. So, this whole thing of our compartmentalized medicine, where we don't recognize that we are a whole, which is why I started this talk with talking about the bigger picture of how everything affects everything. We have to look at this. I mean, don't you all realize sometimes if you're really upset and you go to eat, that your food doesn't digest well, and you might have bloating, and you might have discomfort? Well, imagine what would be happening if your brain was on fire because your blood-brain barrier wasn't protecting you any longer, and toxins that were in your bloodstream could get through into your brain, and you were hypersensitive to every sound, to every color, to every light, to everything that's all around you. I mean, don't you think that would affect the way that you're digesting? I mean, we already know it in ourselves. But for these kids, it's a whole other level. And I really want you to think about this whole idea of their brains on fire. Because it really is like that. For many of them, it's extremely excruciating to be around many of the things that we just think are normal. In my own personal experience, many years ago, like around 1970 or so, I started backpacking in the woods, and I backpacked for 3 years. And when I came out of the woods, we would go out for 3 months, we'd go get supplies and come back in, to go back out to the woods again. So when we came in after 3 years, being in a car felt like I was at a roller coaster. And being in a house, I couldn't do it for more than an hour at a time because the electricity running through the walls jangled my nervous system. And I realized how our level of living numbs us down to sensitivities and awarenesses that we have on all levels. So if that was just, to the environment, imagine the levels of sensitivity and awareness that we might have with connectedness with trees, with life, with plants, with everything, if we were more open. And what's happening with these kids is that they're really, not just kids, but many of us don't even realize how gapsy we all are too, because we've spent a few generations now having denurtured foods, what I call frankenfoods. And now for I don't know how many years it's been, we've had cell phones and we're using microwaves and Wi-Fi and all sorts of things that profoundly affect the brain. And we can be affected either way, from the brain to the gut or from the gut to the brain, because they're one. They're the same type of tissue and profoundly affected. So if we can help these children by being really careful about what we put into their diets, what we put into their mouths, the food that we give them, and make sure that this food has a profound healing quality to it, that will support the healing of the enterocytes, that will support the digestive system, then we can support these children in being able to actually have a bingo moment and to have the healing that they need and to continue that healing as they open and realize. Because what I'm seeing in people who've been doing this diet for a while is that until they're fully healthy, They do not want to feel what it feels like to eat the wrong food again. It feels awful. And my friends ask me, they just go, Meridian, you're bringing your own food to my house. Everywhere you go, I see you've got, your food with you. And I just said, I'm so tired of suffering my belly. As a young child, I was very sickly. I was given unbelievable amounts of antibiotics. They were available for me to go get myself as a little one all the time if I didn't feel good. And I grew up in a house that ate nothing but garbage food, white flour, boxed and canned everything, all the soda pops I wanted, all the potato chips and Betty Crocker cakes and puddings and all that stuff, Jell-O pudding. You just could make as much of it as you wanted. It was all there, and TV dinners and all that stuff. And I have gone through an amazing journey with my digestive system, and it's not fully healed yet, but I'm at a level that I haven't been for years, and I never want to go back there again. I don't want to be sitting over here and you can hear my belly over there. Jonathan, my partner, who's a chiropractor, and I were laughing the other day. I didn't even realize it, but it had been about 3 months since I had been really, 100% committed to GAPS and not putting one drop of any type of grain or starch in my diet. And we'll talk about the diet in a minute and what that actually means. But he said, Meridian, I haven't heard your belly rumble once. It's not talking. And I went, wow, you know what? You're right. It's not complaining anymore. And for me, that was huge. Now, when we're talking with autistic children, we can say that what we start seeing is these kids can start talking again. They can come up and spontaneously give you a hug. They can sit on your lap. This little boy that I was talking about, and granted, we're doing GAPS, but we're also doing a lot of homeopathy, and we're also working with something called biotherapeutic drainage that comes out of Belgium, where we're teaching the body to open the blockages so that the doors can open to release toxins of every organ and cell. So it makes the healing process that much faster. But this little boy, when I first saw him, he was just screeching. That's all he did was screech and run around, and he couldn't hardly sleep. And his parents were up all night long with him. And, there were 2 other children, and she was from Haiti, and he was from Puerto Rico, and they were in the Navy. And, it was just, a nightmare for them to deal with. But they were 1,000% committed to this kid. And themselves, to their own healing as well, because they realized that they also had digestive issues. They were GAPS parents, and that's a piece that most of us don't realize. Even if we're walking around and talking and smiling and studying and educating, most of us are still compromised with our gut and our psychology. And we don't realize it until we start doing the right thing and we start opening and our brains start connecting in an integrated way with our whole digestive system and the whole rest of our body. And we have a bingo day and we realize, oh my God, I can think on a whole other level. I can perceive on a whole other level. Colors are so much brighter. Sounds are so much more beautiful. I can connect and look into the eyes of somebody and feel what they're feeling. These are part of our birthright, and we've really given them up because of our way of living. So we need to open back up, and one of the best ways to do that is by what we take in to our body and transform in our own physical forms, which also receives the etheric quality from the food. It receives the life force from the food and the earth and the light and the sun, and all these things profoundly affect what happens when we take this food into our bodies. So could you put my favorite tres leche cake in front of me? And I would look at it, and now it no longer is some beautiful thing that I want to eat. I would look at it and say, okay, how can I make this in a GAPS way? How can I use some beautiful raw cream and, some raw honey and make a beautiful cream out of this? How can I make a wonderful basic cake that's going to be really moist? How much more apple do I have to add or whatever to make it moist enough to have that same kind of quality with, how much almond flour and how much coconut flour? I know I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here. I want to tell you that the GAPS diet grew out of something called the specific carbohydrate diet. The specific carbohydrate diet was developed by a gastroenterologist who in those days really did believe, in the 1930s and before, that what you ate affected your digestive system. Somehow, after we got into a lot of science and microbiology and all the rest of it, they no longer believe that what you put into your mouth mattered and made a difference in your gastrointestinal system. So they really looked at something called ketosis and how important it was to switch over to being a fat-burning person rather than a sugar-burning person. Sugar burning, you may have heard this term before. It's called AGEs, and it's advanced glycated end products. And when we eat sugars, that's pretty much what happens in our body. And when we eat starches, that's pretty much what happens in our body. And if you have an unhealthy digestive system that has a leaky gut process, and I'm going to talk about exactly what that is in a minute, going on for you, it's extremely difficult to digest starches of any kind. And I mean any kind, because these are extremely large molecules. If you look at them under a microscope, they are globular and they're big and they're much bigger than anything else. And they can really create pain and inflammation going through the digestive system. And when they get out into the bloodstream because of this leaky gut process that we'll talk about, they tend to create all kinds of inflammatory issues. And the other thing that most people don't realize is almost all of our starches are going to break down into aldehydes and morphines. There's a specific morphine that we know of called a gluteomorphine, but all starches cause this morphine reaction. So why are we so addicted to these grains, particularly grains that have been puffed and made into crackers and have been made into cereals and have been made into chips and all the rest of it? I mean, those are the hardest thing for me to give up, actually, because we're just so addicted to them and they're so easy, right? You just if you're hungry, you just grab a bag and you eat a few of these things that are neurotoxic and addictive. And then we move on. And we don't realize what we're doing because we've taken a grain or that may not have been even grown properly, but let's assume that we're getting something that's a health food product that's been grown organically, that it's a high-quality grain like quinoa or amaranth or millet and organic corn or whatever. So we're not even talking about, irradiated stuff and GMO crap and all of that. But you take it and Frankenfoods. You take it and you put it through a process of extraordinarily high heat and you pop it through these different types of mechanisms and things, and you take what's a few cents worth of grain and you make it into a product that's now going to be $1.50 to $5, and you pop it in a bag and you put all kinds of flavorings in it and salt, and maybe it's all organic, but you've taken a basic food that's high in starch, and with this heat process you've actually made it into a neurotoxic substance. And one of the things that Sally Fallon talks a lot about is a study that was done where they took rats and they fed them cornflakes, sugar, pure sugar, 3 different groups of rats. One group got the cornflakes, one group got the sugar, and the other group got the box that the cornflakes came out of. And then they studied what happened to them. And I know it does sound really ridiculous, doesn't it? But believe it or not, the rats that ate the box were better than the rats that ate the cornflakes, because the rats that ate the box basically died of malnutrition. The rats that ate the sugar died of all these complications from, diabetes and brain craziness and all of that. But the rats that ate the cornflakes became cannibals, and they became crazy and vicious and killed each other. Just viciously killed each other. And when they went to studying it, they realized that this process that they've gone through with making the corn into a cornflake made it neurotoxic. And we're putting this neurotoxic stuff into ourselves when we already have compromised gut systems. So how do we get compromised gut systems? Well, let's take a look at it. First of all, how many of you are familiar with the Pottinger cat study? Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about the Pottinger cat study. It's really worth reading in detail. It's a short little book, and there's incredible photographs in there. But Dr. Pottinger basically fed two groups of cats entirely differently, and I believe he went through 5 generations. And one group of cats, he fed just raw milk and raw meat, and the other group of cats, he fed the typical stuff that we feed cats. And he went through 5 generations, and by about the 2nd or 3rd generation, he started seeing that the cats that were fed the food that was the typical stuff we feed cats these days, their skeletal structure was changing, their jaw structure was changing, the size of their brain was reducing, and they were thinner, longer, and their hair quality was not as shiny or as thick, and they died younger than the other cats.
I think they were blind too.
The 2nd generation?
I'm 2nd or 3rd.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, I was thinking 3rd or 4th.
Yeah. They blind very quickly.
Yeah.
Because of lack of vitamin A. Yeah.
So they just went downhill extraordinarily quickly, and by the time they hit the 5th generation, besides having all kinds of horrible diseases, they ended up unable to procreate. Okay? Now, how many generations do we now have with people eating denatured foods? 3.
And it's showing up big time.
Look at what's happening with fertility issues. I mean, I see it in my office all the time. And I see it a lot with people who have a great commitment to their health who are vegetarian vegans. It's amazing how often it's vegans who are having a very difficult time getting pregnant. It's really, really interesting. But anyway, because I don't tend to necessarily see people who are mainstream. It's usually, I'm kind of talking a little bit out there, if you haven't noticed. A little bigger context than most people are used to, to living within. So, of course, it would probably be the vegans that I would be seeing more that are having those types of problems, whereas, the regular person who just has every other imaginable problem under the earth going on with them because of their lifestyle and their food and their lack of awareness of what they're doing and how much they're being harmed.
See their doctor and get a pill.
Say it again?
They're trained to go see their doctor and get a pill.
And they're trained to go see a doctor to get a pill so that they can get rid of the symptom that they have. They're not even looking at why they have the problem, which is really important for us to understand. I should really set that context. Thank you for saying that. We really need to put on our Sherlock Holmes hats and look at why this is happening. And to always keep in mind that if something is happening, it's because this is the best way your body can help you survive. Our bodies are wise far beyond our minds, our intellects. And we have a problem with egotism and a lot of, not all, because we have lots of fabulous medical doctors like Consuelo. But we have a problem with medical doctors out there who think that they're gods and that they are smarter than the body. And they don't listen to the body, they don't honor the process of the body, and all they're trying to do is change the symptoms that people have rather than looking as to why the body in all its wisdom would create that symptom. And it's a really challenging process for us to look really deep, to discover why it is that we're having the symptomology that we're having. But if we start looking at digestion and the idea that we might be having a little bit of trouble taking in what's around us right now, what's going on with our governments, what's going on with the wars that are happening and things like that, we may be having some digestive problems also having to do with what we're not interested in digesting in the world, and that's also showing up in our bodies. But there's also other levels of the physiology of what we're putting into our bodies. And how many of us really take the time to take a few deep breaths before we sit down to eat? And I'm guilty of this too, you guys, so I'm calling one on myself. But how often do we take the time to actually sit down and really relax and recognize what all has gone into the food that we're eating? Not just the preparation that we've done ourselves, but what's gone into, the creation of it, the person who's the farmer, and how much time and energy did they go through, and what's happened to the soil, and what was going on in the cosmos as far as that season, and how much light was there, and what was the quality of air? Was it grown by a busy freeway, or was it grown out in the country? Where as one of my friends just told me, she wants to live in a place where there's black skies at night so she can see the stars. How many of us see the stars? How many of us allow ourselves to be really nurtured, by all these different aspects of life? Okay? So if we can actually allow ourselves the time and the energy to spend, it's really not lots of time, it's really about focus, isn't it? A couple of minutes to just receive, consciously open our minds, our hearts, our senses. Take a moment to feel the textures in your mouth, to hear the sound when you chew it. Is it crunchy? Is it mushy? Is it, soft? How do you feel when you hear that crunch? How do you feel when something's smooth and creamy, rich? And does that make you feel more rich? The crunchy, does that kind of take care of some kind of aggressiveness that you might be feeling and getting it out through your teeth rather than your jaws, rather than, God willing, it's not going to happen with your children. What are we actually experiencing with the food? Okay? That can make a huge, huge, huge difference in what we're doing. So Natasha's focus is on making sure that we have food that is incredibly easy to digest. As much as possible, food that will actually practically absorb itself, digest itself. No matter whether your brain's on fire and you can't really open up consciously to receive something in gratitude or not. And what are those foods? Our ancestors have known forever that if somebody's sick, you make them a soup. Right? I grew up Jewish. Chicken soup is always Jewish penicillin. And different cultures have different soups. My son is what I call a dragon mouth, so his chicken soup is Thai chicken soup, right, with as many pekins in there as you can fit. But that's what he loves, and all the different traditions use different soups. In India, where they're primarily vegetarian, they've actually done basti, which is enemas, using broths when people couldn't digest, because it would totally nourish their whole digestive system to have an enema of a bone broth. And Sally Fallon, what has she talked about so much? But making these beautiful, rich bone broths and using apple cider vinegar. Why apple cider vinegar? Because we want to pull out all those minerals that we can. And we think about them more on a physiological level, but they're not just a physiological level. There's an energetic level, a tissue salt level, an elemental level. And that elemental level of mineral actually feeds the glands and helps the enzyme production of the glands. And those enzymes are what we call they're coenzymes for the total health. The minerals are coenzymes for the total health of our glands. So do you think that we get the same thing from some kind of a synthetic mineral that was made in a factory somewhere, or in a pharmacy somewhere, or some kind of a lab somewhere? No. We have gone through incredible levels of mutation and adaptation over thousands of years to be able to fully absorb and utilize what nature gave us, and to not just survive, but to really thrive on it. And what has been there from the beginning? But animals. And that's the basic background of our ancestors, is eating animals. And it's the foundation of what we need to heal ourselves. And if you start getting into using our wonderful gift of science, because I don't want to badmouth science, we have lots of great benefits from it, you're going to discover that if you look at a bone broth soup, it is absolutely loaded with incredibly absorbable minerals. And if you leave the fat, which has been so demonized, we need fat more than anything. Fat is the primary food of survival in all cultures, all around the world. The fat is more important than the meat. And it's loaded, if it's animal fat, with vitamin A and vitamin D. And here's a big if. If you have healthy gut flora. and you get vitamin A and vitamin D, then you can produce almost all of your own vitamins in your gut that you need, and you will receive them as you need them all during the day. There is no multiple vitamin, no matter how beautifully it's been made with food and everything else, that can come anywhere close to the ability to produce the exact right vitamins for you that your body needs as your own intestines can. And it can't do that unless we have healthy gut flora, and we have vitamin A and vitamin D, ideally from animals. And the highest source, as if you're a Weston Price person, you will well know, is cod liver oil. And ideally the best one you can get is, a real cod liver oil that's been fermented, and a lot of people don't like the way it tastes, and it burns a little bit, and it's not as much fun as other cod liver oils. So I do compromise with a lot of my clients to get it in them. I give them a wonderful cod liver oil I get from England that doesn't have any taste to speak of, and I get it in them. But as they get stronger and healthier, they will start craving the real thing. And they'll eat the real thing, right? So that's what we need, is as our bodies start becoming wiser, as we start going back to getting real sensory perceptions again, real attunement with what's wholly healthy and right for us and all beings, then we're able to start developing a level of health that we need in order to function fully and to actually support a life on this planet that's conceivable for continuing into the future. So one of the most important things that Natasha speaks about, and that was a huge revelation for me as I started to look into it more deeply, is how when we're in the womb, we basically have a sterile digestive system. And it's not until we start descending into our mother's birth canal that we pick up her bacterial count. We start picking up the flora from her. Not only bacteria, but fungus and virus and everything else that's in her. We start picking it up. And that begins the population of the gut flora in the infant. And they also are affected greatly by the hands of anybody who touches them, by anybody who holds them. And so when we have children that have been through a C-section, their first flora is not going to be their mother's flora. Their first flora is going to be what's on the hands of the nurses and the doctors and what's in the room, right? And usually, I'm not sure if it's true in all hospitals, but at many hospitals, it's a procedure that if a child has been a C-section, they just immediately give them an antibiotic. And they destroy everything. Not all, but if you are somebody that is pregnant, it's one of those things you really want to cover with your doctor and make some very, very clear stipulations of what you will allow and what you will not allow in the birth process. So it's a really big issue. And what we normally see that happens is that, babies might not be the healthiest of all babies, but they do so much better while they're nursing, even if their mother's unhealthy. And yes, it's important to really fine-tune the mother's diet when she's nursing, and if the baby's real colicky, you can take certain foods out that can really cause problems. Most nursing moms know that a lot of babies can't handle cabbage and, different things. But anyway, once the baby stops nursing is when we start seeing the gap stuff coming up the most. And what we need to do is recognize that from the very beginning, and if possible before you even get pregnant, how to start rebuilding the gut flora of you, of your husband, how to become healthier within yourself so that you can start turning around the genetic predispositions to unhealthy gut flora. And one of the things that excites me the most, when I think about it, is this whole juxtaposition between epigenetics and genetics. And I think many of you are aware of Dr. Bruce Lipton's work and how he's actually brought to the world the awareness that, what we do has such profound effect on us. And if you keep in mind at the same time that every cell in the body is completely replaced within 7 years, and many cells are replaced within a week or so. You know, that what we do can make a profound impact. And, you know, in Dr. Natasha's talks and in the classes that I've taken, I've heard her say more than once to someone who said, do you think it's possible that, you know, these villi in my lungs can regenerate, you know, where somebody has like a pulmonary fibrosis that the doctors tell them is totally incurable. She said, there's not a single cell in your body that can't heal. It's true. We just have to recognize that we are such integrated people. We have so many different levels. We need to address them all. And the first one, and honestly one of the easiest ones to do, is food. So I'm always surprised when I hear people complaining about how hard it is to do the GAPS diet. So please forgive me when I say this, because I mean I've tried so many diets. I started out, unfortunately, when I was quite young as a vegetarian and went into raw food veganism for 7 years and 2 years of being a fruitarian, and I did 21-day water fasts 4 times a year. And I damn near destroyed my whole digestive system and endocrine system. I ended up 200 pounds because my body was so afraid of another famine that it just slowed down. The doctor said, how are you even alive, when they checked my blood pressure? You know, I mean, everything about my body was incredibly slow. So, you know, probably meant that I might have a few more years because I'm not using things up as fast. But the bottom line is it wasn't very much fun. And it took me about 17 years to rebuild my endocrine system to a degree where I can eat this food and not be worried that I'm going to be 3 pounds heavier tomorrow. But also, you know, I came to really learn a tremendous amount about how our bodies respond to different types of foods, and just exactly, you know, what happens to us when we're eating primarily carbohydrates. Even if they're totally beautiful carbohydrates that have been grown organically and all the rest of it. Our bodies need fat, and fat needs to be the major part of what we're eating. And I stayed away from fat like it was the plague. And I think we've all been pretty much educated to do that and feel guilty if you're putting an extra pat of butter on your, you know, on your broccoli or on your bread, whatever it happens to be.
Same advice is a low-fat diet.
That's right. They say, I mean, it's like, it's amazing how challenging it is to put this information out to my clients who are pretty well educated about so many different forms of diet. But the bottom line is that fat is the vitamin A and the vitamin D. That fat is what turns on a positive form of ketosis. I believe if your child was in ketosis, it was an acidic ketosis. And that ketosis is burning fat rather than burning sugar. And that means that you will burn all the unhealthy fat on your body naturally without having to try. And on top of that, your body will only take so much fat. If you eat more fat, then you won't want to eat more fat than what you need, because your body has an automatic response to make you feel nauseous if you eat too much fat. So you most likely won't eat more fat than what you need. And if you regulate that, and it's, you know, at least for most people, 2 to 4 tablespoons of a high quality fat is really fine at any meal, and even more for certain people. You know, and most people think that's crazy. And we think that we need tons of protein, but protein actually gets broken down into sugar if you have much more than what you can digest. So it becomes a fat. It gets broken down into sugars, and then it gets broken down by insulin and leptin into fat that you hold on to your body. So, you know, the bottom line is that we want to eat small amounts of protein at every meal, as much fat as we need in order to feel really satiated, and vegetables, because we need the vegetables now because we live in such a toxic world that we need all the antioxidants and phytonutrients that are in the vegetables to support the detoxification of our system. And that's really the bottom line of how we should be eating. And when we're dealing with people that have GAPS issues, if you want to heal the gut, you want to do it with foods that will actually require very little work on our part, so the body can put its work into healing us. And the best way to do that is with soups. soups that are made from grass-fed, happy animals that are out in the sunlight. Because when they're out in the sunlight eating grass, their fats, which are the most important part, are omega-3s primarily. When animals are raised in barns and fed grains, which is not their natural diet, they end up creating much more omega-6s. We basically end up with cows that are insulin resistant or diabetic from eating an unnatural diet, which changes their whole fatty structure. And that happens to humans too, because when people are insulin resistant or diabetic, what happens? But they end up with this type 2 diabetes, I should be clear about that. They end up with this big roll of fat around their middle, don't they? Because they're not breaking down fats, and that's what we call the unhealthy fat. It's really not unhealthy fat. That fat has a purpose. It's there. It was designed to help us get through long winters. And there was only carbohydrates available really at the end of fall and the beginning of the very beginnings of winter. So we ate a lot of carbohydrates then, and we put on this big roll of fat, which warms us up to deal with the cold winter and makes us groggy and makes us want to sleep more so that we can hibernate to some degree, and we have this fat that we're burning slowly that will give us some food while we hopefully make it through to the next spring. So it's a survival mechanism. But now we have carbohydrates all the time. And we're not just eating carbohydrates that are things like wild berries and wild fruit, which tends to be pithy. I mean, when I was out in the woods, we found wild grapes sometimes. Rarely, but we found them. They're pretty sour, and they have pretty big seeds in them, and they have pretty thick skins. Sometimes we would find some wild types of crab apples. I loved it when we found elderberries. But, I mean, they're not that sweet. They certainly aren't, like ding-dongs or Hostess cupcakes or rice cakes. Actually, rice cakes are one of the biggest problems. It produces more sugar than anything else because of that popping process. It's one of the quickest sugars to break down of all sugars. The highest in glycemic of anything is rice cakes, and people think they're health foods. Yeah. So, rice cakes is one of the worst foods you could ever put in your body. So is rice, puffed rice and puffed wheat and puffed millet and all those things, because they just break into sugar immediately. And here we are thinking that we're doing such a good thing for our kids or for ourselves, feeding them this stuff. I did too. Until this information finally came into my state of awareness, or until I finally opened up enough to and be in enough pain to realize I needed to look outside of this paradigm of not ever wanting to kill an animal or, do something like that. Instead, I was just destroying my potential to make any kind of a contribution. So, anyway, these questions are really important for us to start looking at and to really realize that what we eat and what we put into our mouths and what we make available to our children can make the hugest difference. And, I can go on and on and on with the biochemistry of all of this and talking to you about how it works and why it works. I just want you to know that Dr. Natasha has written a book that is so well done and so easy to understand, and will explain it to you step by step. In it, she includes something called the introductory diet, and I do want to talk to you a little bit about that because I think it's the best cleanse that anybody can do, whether they're healthy or not. The book is called The Gut and Psychology Syndrome. I just ordered a case from England. They should be back. They should be home when I get there. Yeah, that's the book. It's fabulous. And then she also wrote another book called Put Your Heart in Your Mouth, or Put Your Mouth in Your Heart, Put Your Heart in Your Mouth.
That just came out, didn't it?
It's been out for about a year. Yeah. Yeah. And it's really important to do that book also for most people who are going to freak out when you start feeding them all this high fat, particularly cholesterol, because they think that they're going to die of a heart disease because that's what their doctors tell them. But the book is filled with all kinds of research showing you that actually cholesterol protects you from dying of heart disease, that cholesterol is the most important thing for your brain function. So if you've got somebody who's elderly, the last thing you want to do is put them on statin drugs. You want to feed them bacon and eggs every day, and whole cream in their tea, and you want to get them having all these fabulous fats, and you'll have somebody whose brain's functioning until their last day, and they'll be able to move and walk because they'll have lubrication in their joints and their bones. And this stuff is so incredibly important. Our nervous system has a myelin sheath that's primarily all fat. And every single cell in our body has a cell membrane, and those cell membranes are made out of phospholipids and fatty acids. It's all fat. We need fat. So she explains all this in there, and she shows the research. And just for common sense, without getting into all the the nitty-gritties about it, up until about 130 years ago, heart attacks were pretty much unknown. And if somebody had a heart attack, doctors from hundreds of miles around would come to see this rare phenomena. It wasn't even listed in the medical books as a condition until about 70 years ago. It didn't happen until we started denaturing food. It didn't happen until we started bringing sugar and all of this white flour and all of this into the world. There were certain conditions that kings had that, people had about 70 years ago because they were fed all of these delicacies that people had to take tremendous amounts of time to refine, like, refined flours and stuff to make them their special treats.
Gout. They would get gout.
Yeah, all sorts of things.
Some really rich foods, but that was high in fat, right?
But it had also to do, it's like if you have a natural fat, it's not going to be a problem if the fat is an unnatural fat. And so
I could eat duck pate every day.
duck pate every day would be wonderful for you, particularly if you're a fast oxidizer or parasympathetic dominant person. So it just means it has to be a real duck pate made with a healthy duck that's been raised outside, in the sunlight, eating natural foods. Bugs, yeah. Yeah, they eat bugs, which are loaded with minerals. And, most cultures have eaten bugs that are aboriginal cultures all over the place. And when we look at people in India, we think, well, they're vegetarians. And what they've actually discovered is that they eat a tremendous amount of bugs without realizing it.
All their grains. They're not antiseptic the way we are.
Right.
The way we process food in this country.
And their sugars and all the rest of it. They're using real cane sugar that they've just boiled down, and it's really wonderful stuff. It's got all the minerals and stuff in it, but still, they've got a lot of insects. Gnats everywhere, but also lots of ants and all sorts of little critters. So anyway, it's a complete paradigm shift. And so it takes some bravery to face people out there who just think you're crazy. And they think you're going to kill yourself. But when I was in my early 30s, I could give a talk in the morning, and in the evening, I couldn't find the word for the name of the thing that I just talked about. And I'm almost 60, and I have a better memory now than I did in my 30s. I have a better memory now than I did a year ago, and I definitely have a better memory now than I did 3 months ago. As I've been saying, fat, okay, I'll have a little more. Wow, I think I'll have a little more. And I'm eating chicken livers every other day. They've just totally changed my life. And I thought they were, really, they have. And it's one of the foods that Natasha says that every pregnant woman should have chicken livers at least every other day, if not every day, because of the incredible levels of vitamin A and vitamin D in them. She doesn't say chicken liver, she says liver. For me, it's chicken livers, because I love the taste of chicken livers, and I have a little bit of a challenge with the other livers. They're much stronger tasting, and chicken liver's so mild, and it's so quick to make them. It takes me about 5 minutes to make a dinner with, beautiful onions and ghee, and, if you eat pork, you can have bacon and lots of garlic, and you just saute them in all this yumminess for, 2 or 3 minutes, and they're still pink inside, so they're not hard. They're tender and juicy, and you can play with your spices. I make a masala with turmeric and cumin and cardamom and all these wonderful digestive herbs that make it real easy to digest, and you can support this whole process.
But you want to make sure that you get chicken livers from chickens that are raised perfectly on pasture, organic fed, because a lot of conventional chickens are fed feed that has arsenic in it, and it includes liver. And they've verified that the livers from from conventional fed chickens are very often quite high in mercury. So you've got to be real careful with that.
I totally agree, and I always get mine at Whole Foods, and we have another health food store. We don't have Whole Foods where I live in Oxnard, but we have a place called Lassen's that I'll get mine from. And then we also have a fabulous farmer's market that I can walk to on the beach. And there's someone who brings incredible grass-fed meat there, so, and eggs. It's fabulous. But I just want to say one thing about the liver, and because this is what Natasha told us, and I'm going to put it out there, and it could be refuted, but Natasha said that the liver processes fat. It doesn't processes toxins. It does not hold on to toxins.
That's what Sally said too.
And the bottom line is you don't need to be worried about eating liver because it's toxic because of the world. She says eat as much liver as you can. Of course you want grass-fed liver. You don't want any meat that's not grass-fed because it just doesn't have the nutrients and the qualities that you want. But she said it's it's our fat that stores toxins. It's not the liver. So please don't be afraid of liver for that reason, because I know so many people were, and so was I. And when I had colon cancer years ago and did a whole nutritional therapy to heal myself, I used one of the things that was said that you should use is raw liver, and you should eat raw liver with carrot juice every day. It was part of the Gerson therapy. It took everything in my being to figure out how on earth I was going to be able to ingest that without vomiting it, and it was all in my head. It really had nothing to do with the taste of it, because when I made fresh carrot juice and blended it in the carrot juice, it tasted delicious. Really did. If I didn't know what I was drinking, it would not have been a problem. It's not like drinking some of those intense Chinese herbal teas that I've drank in my life.
I can't even smell those.
But it's amazing, just amazing what you can do, and how the body will heal itself, and how we have so many ideas that get in the way of true perception because of the nonsense we've been fed. So I actually personally went way, way, way out on a limb, and I don't know if any of you know about Augenis Vonderplanitz or not, but I met Augenis, and I did Augenis's work for about a year and a half, which is primarily eating raw meat. I ate raw chicken, you guys. And everyone has these issues about salmonella. But I ate raw meat, I ate raw chicken daily, raw cream, raw butter, raw honey. That was his diet, basically, and raw fish. And it didn't work out well for me. I think maybe it was probably too much of the honey and the cream not being broken down into a ferment. So one of the things that Natasha says, which is different than what Western Price normally puts out there, but I just want you to keep this in context with, remember, we've had more than 100 years now of really devitalized food, but 70 years of food that is just unbelievably toxic and antibiotics that are getting stronger and stronger and stronger all the time, right? So Natasha says that most of us cannot handle lactose, and even from raw milk, and that we need to start out with yogurt, and because the yogurt's breaking down the lactose into a form that we can handle. So we need to start out with just the whey from lactose, whey from yogurt, and then slowly add that whey into our diet, and then go to yogurt itself, slowly adding the amounts in. And then we can go to kefir. Yogurt is basically a bacterial support, but kefir has both bacterial and fungal support, and it's much stronger, and it causes much greater die-off of toxins in the body, of the bad pathogenic microbes. We'll talk about microbes in just a second. So basically, if we start with the yogurt, we'll be building up our good flora slowly. Then when we add the kefir, we're going to be building up more different forms of organisms in our body that are strong, healthy organisms that can fight unhealthy organisms like bacteria, fungus, and virus. So my way of understanding this is, and even this whole idea of eating food that might have salmonella in it being healthy for you, is that we have a terrain. Our body is a terrain. And, we think of ourselves as just being human cells. But there's a Human Genome Project, but there's also the Human Biome Project. And the biome has to do with all of these different microorganisms that are in the body. We have 90% more microorganisms in our body than we do human cells. Only 10% of this thing that we call ourselves is human. We are a shell that is holding a whole universe inside of us. And those microorganisms affect absolutely everything that goes on inside of us. That ability to absorb anything has to do with those microorganisms. The ability to be able to have cellular respiration and just about every function in the body is dictated by those microorganisms. Now, I want you to imagine for a second, the difference between a swamp and a desert and rich garden soil and, let's say, even a rainforest. And these are all very, very different environments. And let's say that we have a seed pod, and we take the seeds out of the seed pod, so they're all from the same plant, and we plant these seeds in these different environments. We're going to have very, very different results, aren't we? Some of them are not going to make it. And that's because that environment doesn't provide for the seed what it needs. Well, each microorganism has very different needs. Some of them love an anaerobic environment, and those are the bad guys. They're bacteria, fungus, and virus that can hurt us, but the reason why they're there is not to hurt us. They're there because we only have an anaerobic environment where toxins aren't being cleared, and where toxins are stuck, and where the doors aren't open, so the toxins are continuing to live, and they're fermenting inside the cell rather than being burned the way they're supposed to be through fat burning and ketosis. So if you have this toxic environment, then there's going to be specific bacteria, fungus, and virus that are going to be there eating away at the garbage and possibly even the cell walls to get at the fungus and virus that has gone deep into your cell, or the toxins that are deep in your cell that can't get out. Do you see? There's a purpose for everything. So we have to work on shifting this terrain. And there's nothing more effective at shifting a terrain than breathing, really breathing, having really good food, and digesting and absorbing that food. Now, there's a bunch of behaviors that are important to help us do that. And one thing that I talk to my clients about, and this costs absolutely nothing, is taking time to breathe. I mean, really deep breathing. Because every healthy cell needs oxygen. And if it doesn't have oxygen, then you're not fully feeding yourself, even if you're giving yourself the most beautiful GAPS food in the world. You still need oxygen, right? So if you place your hands on your bellies, when you breathe in, you want your belly to expand. And then when you breathe out, you want your belly to go back in towards your back. And ideally, we need at least 100 breaths like this every day. So I don't expect anybody to sit around and do 100 of these unless you're a yogi and you have lots of extra time and you're retired and you can do that. I mean, you can get so blissed out doing this, you have no idea. I'm going to have us take 3 deep breaths in a minute and you'll see what I'm talking about. I mean, just 3 deep breaths can change your whole consciousness. It's amazing. But I suggest that people do this numerous times during the day, but we kind of need something to remind us, because otherwise we won't do it, because there's a million other things that we're thinking about. So I suggest that we create different triggers to take 3 deep breaths. One of my favorite ones is a red light, because a lot of people don't like it when they get a red light. They don't want to slow down. So we might as well benefit by it, and also the cars around us benefit by it, and the people in our car benefit by it. So if we take 3 deep breaths when we hit a red light, we'll relax, and we'll also be oxygenating ourselves and supporting our digestion and our overall health and our respiration and everything else. Another great time to take 3 deep breaths is before you eat. And that might help to remind you to actually open and receive. And I encourage people to think about breathing in as a receiving process and breathing out as a releasing process. releasing everything that you no longer need. Inviting those cell membranes to open up and release the toxins, and be properly handled through the body. And as we breathe in, we deeply receive the nutrients and accept them and invite them to be fully part of us, absorbed into us the way they need to be. Because we're taking, the etheric force and the energy of life, of plants and of animals, and we're taking them into ourselves, and we're making them part of us. They become one with us through this process. I used to be really involved with teaching people how to do something called the oneness blessing. And, eating is a oneness blessing if we really consider it. We're becoming one with what we take into ourselves. We're becoming one with everything that we actually become aware of, but that's another story. So, anyway, there's that aspect of things. And it's just so important to find times for yourself where you would normally be stressed, or times where it would be incredibly beneficial to be relaxed, to do these breaths. So when you first get up in the morning before you start your day, it'll set the tone for the whole day. 3 deep breaths. When you're going to bed at night, 3 deep breaths. Before you make love, 3 deep breaths. Really connect with your partner. Breathe together. There's so many different wonderful times. If your child is screaming, 3 deep breaths. Invite them to breathe with you, Mommy's breathing. Want to breathe with me? Let's breathe in the love. There's a time. There's lots of wonderful times to be breathing. So, actually, every time is a great time to be breathing, but, to be consciously breathing. So, you want to think about things that might be stressors for you, and before you take a test in school, 3 deep breaths, Before you have an important business meeting, 3 deep breaths. And it always helps to set an intention when you're breathing, but on the physiological level, I just care that you get 3 deep breaths, And on other levels for yourself, I really encourage you to really deeply look at what it is you want to receive more of and what it is you want to release more of in your world. And use your breathing as an option, as a beautiful process of doing that, receiving more of what you want and releasing more of what you don't want anymore. So I'm going to invite you to breathe with me. So let's just take your hands and place them on your tummies. And close your eyes. And just take as deep a breath in as you're comfortable with, feeling your belly expand. And then in your own timing, also let go of that breath, feeling your belly come back towards your body. And exhaling. And let's do 3 of those. Can you feel the difference? It really makes a big difference, doesn't it? In the way you feel. It's way important for healing that we have some time to be quiet and still. So I want to mention one more of Dr. Natasha's wonderful products, and then I'm going to open this up to your questions. And because I know some of you, and also sharing of your experiences with GAPS. Because I know some of you have been doing it for even longer than I've known about it, and you'll probably have wonderful things to share with people. And then perhaps I can also help you by addressing some issues that you might be dealing with, and unless you feel they're too personal. And then, just know I'm in Austin until Thursday, and my book is actually very open on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. I really scheduled heavily before then. So if any of you feel like you need a session, or something to go more deeply into understanding all of this, or some specifics for your own health issues, I'm available then. But Dr. Natasha also had a fabulous video made, and I've heard this said so many times, it's not just me, that when I watched that video, I realized that when I read, I make up my own ideas of what is being said. And they're very different sometimes than what people actually mean. And when I watched the video, I realized I was making things very differently than what she had intended for us to do. And the video is so well done. It's done in a professional kitchen with two people that have been working with her for a very long time. And they are showing you how to do what's called the introductory diet, each step of it. So they actually tell you, here are the things that you need to have in order to make the foods for the first stage of the introductory diet. Here are the foods that you need to go buy, and here's how you make it. Yeah? The video is called Cooking with Gaps, and I think I have 8 copies of it here with me. So I had run out of books, and it turned out that Natasha, she just had another grandbaby. So she's here in the United States right now visiting her grandbaby, and they weren't there to send me the books. And they won't be back till after I get back, so I won't be getting the books back. But I order them by the case from England. She's living in England now. But I've already gotten a case of the Cooking with Gaps tapes, or the discs. They're about 2.5 hours, and they'll take you through each step of the introductory diet. There's different stages of the introductory diet, so there's a whole section that just shows you stage 1, a whole section shows you stage 2, 3, 4, 5, and the full GAPS diet. So they're the most helpful things if you actually want to do the program of anything that I've ever found. I mean, as far as implementing the program, it's more important than the book. As far as actually understanding what you're doing, why you're doing, that book is an absolute must. I mean, you really should have them both. If you're committed to understanding this, to helping yourself, to helping your family, or just to sharing it with people that you love, because it will really teach you how to do the whole thing. So I just want to tell you that this diet has been the foundation for not only dealing with autism, but ADD, ADHD, anxiety, depression, schizophrenia, and then the new books she's going to be coming out with that she hasn't come out with yet, but she did train us in working with this, with type 1 diabetes. You can literally get people off of insulin. Of course, type 2 diabetes, that just clears up really quickly. So many thyroid problems clear up really quickly. Hormonal issues very, very quickly. But autoimmune diseases, all of them, and all the neurological diseases. So if it's ALS, if it's Parkinson's, if it's MS, all of them are benefited. She has not worked with cancer. I've done a lot of work with cancer, but she has not worked with cancer with this diet. And she questions this for cancer, because usually what you're trying to do is starve the cells rather than nourish the cells. So she questions how well this would work with cancer. I definitely use it with people after chemo, and I find it incredibly beneficial, and while they're doing chemo, so they can actually digest something, so they don't go into marasmus and we don't lose them. But anyway, I can't recommend this diet enough. And I do want to mention one other thing, and that is that, for about 18 years now, I've been doing something called metabolic typing, which has to do with biochemical individualization. And I've known Bill Walcott, who wrote the metabolic typing book, since before he wrote the book. And, when he was working with cancer, that's how I met him, with Dr. Kelly. And I have to tell you that we are all unique and different. And I really, after working with metabolic typing and unique individual bodies for 18 years, I really understand that. I also understand that a lot of our imbalances are because of the world that we live in. And, there are 2 primary families that Bill would talk a lot about. One was the protein type and the other was the carb type. Honestly, I think the more truthful way of saying it is that one was a high purine protein type and the other was a low purine protein type. And but I do know that some people really have a hard time digesting fats because they haven't eaten fats their whole life. I was one of them. I am a classic sympathetic slow oxidizer and extremely slow oxidizer, as you probably might have guessed from that story I told you. Everything's slow for me. So digesting fats is a real issue. And in our training, basically, one of the wonderful things that Natasha did is she showed us how to deal with all these different problems that people can have by their biochemical individual needs. Some people need to take supplements besides just cod liver oil and enzymes and probiotics. Those are the 3 supplements she recommends for almost everybody. But some of us actually, like me, I needed to just go to town with pancreatic enzymes and hydrochloric acid. And other people don't need to do that. I needed to actually even take them in between meals to upregulate my ability to break the stuff down and to digest it. So some people, even though I'm saying, 2 to 6 tablespoons or even more of fat, if you were like me, you had to start with a half a teaspoon and build up. And now I'm eating tablespoons. But, you have to be able to break it down. And a lot of our body will do its best to adapt to what it's given. So if it's been given a diet of nothing but fat-free food for 20 or 30 years, or, on rare occasions having something that's rich, you might need to help your body along a little bit to be able to make these transitions. So it's a real important piece. Yes, as long as you make your own. And
do you like the coconut ice cream?
For Christmas, I made this incredible dish that was made with fresh apples, and I used lots and lots of butter and sauteed the apples in butter. And I used some pure Lohan fruit that I had for sweetening. And I made ice cream with lots of eggs and fresh cream and milk and Lohan and fresh vanilla bean. We didn't feel like we were deprived.
Do you use Yacon?
Do I use what?
Do you use Yacon as well as Lohan?
I haven't. I'd like to talk to you about it.
Yeah, I'm real curious.
I haven't tried it yet.
Where are you getting your Lohan?
I'm ordering it from China, and I'm looking at actually, I actually put together a website so far called Sweet Longevity. Lohan is a Chinese herb that's been used for thousands of years. It's a longevity herb, and it heals the enterocytes, which is the whole basis of what we're doing with...
it's expensive, though. That's the problem. I mean, I looked into it years ago when I was making a coconut bar, and I couldn't duplicate it. I was like, oh, I can't use this.
The thing with Lohan, though, is it's so much sweeter than stevia.
Right. But does it have a...
It does have no bitter aftertaste at all. So the hard part of working with Lohan is you have to use such tiny amounts that it's almost hard to figure out how to make it tiny enough. And most people who sell Lohan are cutting it with other things so that they can make it work. If I was going to cut it with anything, I would cut it with an amino acid, glycine. But mostly it's been cut with fructose derivatives.
Xylitol. I've seen it mixed with xylitol.
Yeah. Now, here's the whole thing, you guys. Xylitol is a sugar that I've told people to use for years. And I've, imported a lot of birch sugar. And I only want birch. I don't want the corn cob sugar for my clients. But honestly, if I eat a teaspoon of that, I'm in the bathroom. And these kids with autism who have diarrhea issues, not the ones with constipation issues, but the ones with diarrhea problems, they really can't handle xylitol. And I still can't handle it, and I've done a lot of healing on my gut. I still have a ways to go, for sure. And definitely my stomach, my hydrochloric acid has a long ways to go. But it's not good for everybody. But for people, it's a sugar that actually kills anaerobic bacteria and things. And xylitol. And I use it inside people's noses with water to clear sinus infections.
Gum.
Right.
Because I send the little tablets or whatever to school, and they chew on them after they eat.
They're fabulous in gum. They're in toothpaste. You can use it instead of toothpaste. When I make my own tooth powders with baking soda and salt, I put in xylitol and fresh clove. A drop of clove and cinnamon or mint. For the children to brush their teeth with, or for us to brush our teeth with. I've been making my own my own tooth powders for years. So, I mean, there's all sorts of things that we can do with this, but Natasha is really against using any kind of sweetener at this point other than sugar. I mean, other than honey, sorry. Raw honey. And the raw honey, she explains to us, needs to be cold extracted. I don't know if you know this, but I just think it's so beautiful. But the bees, if the temperature gets over 85 degrees, bees will congregate around the honey and start flapping their wings to be like an air conditioner. And if they can't keep the temperature down, they'll abandon the hive because the honey to them is no longer any good. It's toxic. And in India, they talk about cooking honey makes it into a poison. So I've really been looking at other sources of sweetener to use, even though Natasha says to use honey for cooking, for baking. That's why I'm really interested in the lohan, personally. Because I think that, we need a different source of sweetener for baking so that we can use our honey to get the real benefit from it, which is the enzymes that are in the honey that break down things, and they have incredible etheric forces in them too from the honey. It's been recognized as a profound healing food in many cultures. Yes, in India, in the Middle East, it's a holy food.
I was just going to say Donna's.
Huh?
Donna Gates has
Her body ecology one, but it's made from corn, and she...
it's low on and corn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But she said it's fermented, and it's made in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
I've tried it. I haven't thought it was fantastic. It's way pricey, too.
Oh, yeah. But, I mean, I don't think that my lohan's going to have to be that pricey.
Yeah.
I have to look at it. I'm not a numbers person, so I'm going to have somebody else crunch the numbers for me. I have to buy, 20 pounds to start out with. It's $200 for 20 pounds, so if any of you are math wizards, you can give me an idea of what that might break down into. But anyway, I'm looking at doing it and making it available and doing a lot of experimenting with baking and cooking with it all.
Yeah, the baking part is hard because when you're talking about bulk,
Yeah.
volume and stuff, that's what makes it all kind of crazy.
I want to mention one other quick thing. I would imagine you need a break and a stretch break really soon. Maybe use the bathroom and everything else, and we can come back and ask questions. But I just wanted to mention to you that Dr. Andrew Wakefield has done some really amazing research. And, what he found is that there was tremendous inflammation in the digestive system of all of these children that he worked with who had autism. And many of them had huge obstructions in their bowels. And, when you see thin ribbon-like stool, it's usually because there's an obstruction that the feces has to move through it, and it makes this thin ribbon. So, even though they're having bowel movements, they're still constipated because they've got this blockage. And basically he's saying that the lymphatic system isn't working properly in the digestive system. There's a lot of lymphoid aggregates in the digestive system. So let me just quickly tell you that your lymph system is involved, it's your trash collector and it's your trash purifier. And every single cell in your body has access to lymph vessels where the toxins are picked up, but also lymphocytes are delivered. And if your lymph system isn't working well, you're going to have a pretty hard time really getting the benefit that you need in your digestive system. Now, for years, part of my training and what I've been encouraging people to do is something called castor oil packs. I don't know if any of you are aware of of Edgar Cayce and the Sleeping Prophet and how he just gave prescription after prescription in a trance state for thousands of people who are sick, and they for the most part, healed. And in almost every one of those prescriptions, part of it included castor oil. And scientists wanted to figure out why on earth he told them to all do castor oil. And what they discovered is that castor oil, when it's applied externally on the body, upregulates the lymphatic system there. So one thing that I could tell you that I think is more important than anything else besides eating properly and breathing and getting clean water, the next most important thing is to support your lymphatic system. And the best way to do that is with castor oil packs. And I just want you to think about this for a second. But, this area right here is where your whole lymph system ends. It's right on top of your collarbone. But right down here is where your lungs and your heart is, right? And then beneath that, we come to our stomach, and we have our pancreas, and we have our gallbladder, and we have our beneath that, we have our small intestine, and we have our liver, and we have our gallbladder, and then we have our large intestine, and we have our women have ovaries, men have testes, and then we have our uteruses, and in the back, at the waist level, we have our kidneys. Well, what do you think would happen if we increase the lymphatic system in that entire area? That's what castor oil packs are about. And they take a little bit of time, but for the autistic kids, honestly, this is one of the best things you can do to increase your health and to keep you healthy for the rest of your life is a castor oil pack. And one of my mentors insists that his patients do them every day or he won't take them as patients. Yeah. He just says, if you aren't willing to help yourself, I'm not willing to help you either. Bye. Come back when you're ready. And, basically, you're using a piece of cotton flannel, and you're drizzling. I like to use this castor oil that I get actually from Bob Marshall. It's extra virgin castor oil. Most castor oil that you buy at the health food store is so thick that you have to take a shower after you use it, but his is thin enough that it actually really, really can absorb into the skin. You don't have to do that. It's a castor oil pack, honey.
The name. I'm sorry, the dog.
Oh, Dr. Marshall. And just so Premier Research Labs. Just so you know, you guys, I have a international pharmacy of natural products that I've probably spent. Well, it's probably over $100,000 on my shelf right now. It's constant. And I would so appreciate it if you bought some of this stuff for me if you're going to buy it. And I'll do my best to give you the best prices I can. But, I need to move it. It can't sit on the shelf or I end up having to throw it away. And I'm in California, yeah. But, yeah, I'd have to ship it. Yeah. But I also have things you won't be able to get anywhere else in the United States, probably. From France, from Germany, from Belgium, on and on and on it goes. But anyway, those castor oil packs are so incredibly beneficial for you. And there's a couple of different ways to do it. I happen to consider myself very fortunate to have a sauna. And so what I personally do is every day I just rub myself down with the castor oil and I go in the sauna. So that's how I get around my castor oil packs. There's a lot of ways to do this. The other thing you can do is you can actually wrap your child in this fabric and let them go to sleep with it, which is a fabulous thing to do. And it really will support them. The other thing to do is the classic way to do a castor oil pack. And I have the information all on my website. You can download it, but I'm going to quickly tell you that I use trash bags to protect everything that I'm doing from the castor oil, because anything that gets touched with castor oil will have castor oil stains forever. So you go to the Goodwill and buy yourself your castor oil towels and your castor oil clothes. And, just really comfortable big baggy things. And you basically will, choose the areas that you're going to apply the castor oil to. But hopefully you're going to at least go from underneath your breast down to your pubic bone, which will get all your major organs. If you have any lung issues, heart issues, I definitely would come up to the top of the body too. And you can use many different ways to bring heat into that area, but you do bring heat. Heating pads have been classically used. You can reduce the electrical problems by either tying 2 knots in the electrical cord itself, or Bob Marshall talks about taking 2 twisty ties that have metal inside of them and tying them about this far apart, close to the plug, and that will help to reduce any negative influence from the electricity. And you can use a heating pad on the front and on the back. So, and spend 45 minutes at least. Great way to relax. Perfect thing to do if you're going to be doing any meditation. I encourage people to stimulate their parasympathetic nervous systems, and one of the great ways to do that is by lying on the floor, and let's say this is where your knees are, over your bed. So you're lying on the floor and you put your knees up here and your feet would be over here. In other words, you've got an elevation happening. When we're in fight or flight, all the energy goes down into your legs to help you run away from the tiger, right? When you put your legs up like this, all the energy comes down into your torso to help it rebuild and heal again. It stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system. 10 minutes of doing that will help you sleep. So if you have a hyper child or you're hyper yourself and you don't sleep well, it's a great thing to do before you go to sleep. It will stimulate your own body's resources to relax you. Great time to do some deep breathing. And it's also a great time to just let go of everything and just be in emptiness. and let yourself really relax. It's really wonderful. So those are a few things that I found that really, really can make a huge difference. There's many, many other things, of course. You know, children with snotty noses. I don't know if you've, or adults with snotty noses and who have problems with, all kinds of sinus issues and things like that. There's something called warming socks. And warming socks is where you just take two pairs of socks. And I actually talk to all of my parents and have them do this with their babies the day they come home from the hospital and do it every night. But it's great for adults too. It just doesn't work as fast on us. You make your feet really nice and warm, either by running warm or hot water over them, or you can use a hairdryer if you need to. And then you take a pair of cotton socks and moisten them, actually wet them, dip them in water, wring them out, and put them on your feet. And then you put wool socks on afterwards and go to bed. And it will draw your feet will draw energy down to the base of your feet, and your feet will get warm enough to dry the socks. Your feet will be warm when you get up in the morning, and it will have drawn energy down from here, so it helps to pull all the junk and support the circulation. One of the processes of healing is circulation. We need proper circulation. People who tend to have cold hands and cold feet, it's great for them too. It supports that whole circulatory process. So warming socks is another wonderful, simple little thing that you can do. Okay? So let's take a short break. We have 2 more things we need to accomplish. I'm not sure what the time is. I always time warp. But the 2 things we want to accomplish is getting your questions answered, and I want to demonstrate for you how to make a simple sauerkraut, because it's a major part of our healing, is having foods that are natural probiotics. Sauerkraut, yogurt, and kefir. Okay? Thank you. Let's take 5 minutes.
Lightly bring it into the living room. Seating. Yeah, we'll finish up inside.